Please welcome them again.
As Mahatma Gandhi once said, Earth provides enough to satisfy every man's needs, not every man's greed. Our topic is conservation biology, and in our group, we have Jacob, Joseph, Alex, Grace, and Catherine, and myself, Caitlin. Conservation biology includes protecting, preserving, and managing species and their habitats all around the world. Conservation biology arose in the late 1800s during the Industrial Revolution. During this time period, the human population almost doubled in size, and you can see by the graph that as the human population increased, the amount of extinctions also increased. And scientists came to the conclusion that the cause of this was, and we continue to do this today. Conservation biology is significant because it's a discipline with a deadline, because if we continue to take natural resources from the environment for our everyday lives, then future generations will face the consequences of not having these natural resources to live off that we use every day.
There are many current actions and events concerning conservation biology. For the actions, there are many protected areas in the United States alone, over 200,000 that are consisted of forest and marine areas, and those need to be protected by because their resources are being constantly taken just more and more for population expansion, and not many of them are protected. And another action are the laws that are set up. Sure, there are many laws, but not many of them actually help, but laws like the Convention of International Species Protection, that's an international law that allows the globe to not sell or endanger more protected animals and species. Also the Clean and Water Air Act that promotes the air and water to be not continuously pumped with pollutants that can harm it. But events that follow this are, as seen, the Californian water conservation. As you may know, California is kind of in a drought, kind of dying, not really. But the governor, Jerry Brown, he proposed that at least water that's consumed by the state be taken back 25%, which most of it would be towards the farms that allow the state to keep its money. Also, in Virginia, they have a plan called BDOF Tomorrow Woods, which is the Virginia Department of Forestry, that want to protect our woods and conserve it and try to make it better, just to constantly keep our state more beautiful than to ruin it with bigger businesses and pollutants. So this is okay.
Everyone has to eat. Whether it was the cereal I had for breakfast or the pizza we are about to indulge, all the ingredients start with the farmer. We believe that the secret to saving biodiversity starts with the farmer also. Our next step is to aid, encourage, and educate farmers to implement sustainable agricultural practices and equipment. Sustainable agriculture can be described as raising crops or animals with the intention of leaving the environment a better place. Agriculture has become a multi-billion-dollar industry in the United States, and the routine practices of pesticides and non-sustainable agriculture have become very common. If we can reduce the amount of pollution caused by farming, we can reduce the loss of biodiversity. Our goal is achieved by increasing funding through the EPA, USDA, and NRCS. These government organizations allow farmers to afford and understand sustainable agriculture implications. On the screen, you can see 3 pictures of examples of what the government can fund. The first picture with the cows is a waterer that cows use, or any livestock, that can be implemented to prevent cattle from polluting creeks by drinking out of them. The second picture is of bobwhite quail, and state government is now funding the planting of native grasses all across Virginia to save the bobwhite quail population. And the last picture is of a riparian buffer, which is really just the planting of trees surrounding a body of water to help filtration not only to the oceans, but also boosting habitat for specific species. The two graphs show different things. The first graph with the blue column showed and proved that conventional, which is the use of pesticides and tilling, which Alex will talk about later, is actually much more expensive than no-till or sustainable agricultural practices. The second graph shows that if we increase the amount of sustainable agriculture, farmers can be able to afford to produce more and more efficiently. Therefore, farming will even have more economic value, which will add to the economy.
All right, so the current issues that we focused on was topsoil loss and carbon dioxide pollution. 30% of arable land has been lost over the past 40 years due to erosion, and 60% of that soil loss ends up in lakes, rivers, and streams, which contributes to pollution due to the runoff containing pesticides and fertilizers. And most of the soil loss is due to farming methods, like using plows and tillers that turns up the soil. And by the end of 1935, after the U.S. Experienced the Dust Bowl, it was estimated that 850 tons of topsoil were lost. And keep in mind that it takes 500 years to replace 1 inch of topsoil, so we are not really getting anything back from that. And a 2006 study showed that we are losing topsoil 10 to 40 times faster than it's being replenished. And in order to make sure that the U.S. doesn't experience another event like the Dust Bowl, these farming methods need to be changed, and that can happen by implementing no-till agriculture. In the 1970s, farmers and researchers partnered to show the benefits of no-till agriculture. And no-till agriculture utilizes seed drills and herbicides instead of focusing on plows and turning up the soil. It produces bigger yields and is actually more cost-effective, like we saw on the previous slide. In 2009, more than 1/3 of the U.S.'s farmland was planted using no-till agriculture. So for carbon dioxide pollution, yes, CO2 is naturally present in the atmosphere, but human emissions account for the increase since the Industrial Revolution. In 2012 alone, CO2 accounted for 82% of all greenhouse gas emissions, and humans can say that they're responsible for that. And the main reason for the increase is the burning of fossil fuels, and this graph shows what each sector contributes to that emission, and electricity and transportation are the highest with 32% and 38%.
When distributing our funding, we plan to distribute it into 2 major categories: education and research. We plan to educate the general public as well as farmers about the merits of no-till and sustainable agriculture by working with local state universities as well as the Cooperative Service and the Extension Office to educate the farmers. We can do this by having equipment demos at equipment dealerships, as well as hiring soil analysis technicians and extension agents to help farmers understand how using no-till will make their soil more fertile. Through research and development, we can research for farther sustainable agricultural techniques. At Oklahoma State University, which did the research that produced the graph on the previous slide, they have the facility and staff to research sustainable agricultural practices. In order to keep this program going, it needs funding. So we plan to donate $25,000 to Oklahoma State in order to start a fund. We encourage the Society of Conservation Biology, as well as other associations set up for conservation biology, to donate regularly to this fund to keep it going. We can also use social media to educate farmers about government as well as private funding for grants that encourage sustainable agricultural practices such as riparian buffers and no-till. There's a lot of money available to farmers, but they simply do not know it. And when they figure out through the social media campaigns that keep them updated, when they find this money available, they'll be able to use it to make their farming practices more sustainable.
Conservation biology has been a growing issue throughout the world. Even with the current actions that have been taken by creating protected areas, national and state parks, and even passing some laws to help protect our environments, it's still not enough. Connie, a lot of people, this is only a bit of the spectrum of conservation biology. Some people don't understand that conservation biology is not just protecting endangered species. Rather than it's also protecting and managing their environments and also giving back to nature. With this next steps, we will be educating our farmers to make agricultural advancements and to convert into a more safe, efficient method. And with the aid by government funding and also private funding, we can help have the introduction to these new agricultural methods. And so this leads up to the big question. Why should we get funded? Well, I want everybody to stop and take a look around. Us as humans have made astronomical steps to ensure our survival. We have been educating ourselves to move forward in the world, and this has been relying completely on natural resources. But what happens when these natural resources are not there? If we don't take larger actions right now, we can face the future generations to have a scarcity of resources. And so if it keeps going, then we too will become another organism that has fallen under the extinction list. Thank you. Now we're open for questions.
You talk mainly about farming, but what is the proportion between farming and, for example, building or spreading of plants? Do you know? I'm just curious because
Say it again.
you focus about on farming. What about cities, roads?
I guess how much of the problem can just focusing on the agriculture address when there's so many other areas you could focus on?
All right, I'm just gonna go back to the one graph that we had to kind of show that a little bit more. One more.
Transitions are working against me.
Yeah, I know. All right, so the graph on your left shows kind of the distribution of the economic growth between these different sectors of the economy. But basically, agriculture affects all of us. We all have to eat. And I believe that if we all start eating with foods that are raised sustainably, we could all affect the trend of the pollution of the environment. And I know that huge manufacturing plants and electricity and all those different issues cause a lot more of the pollution that we are facing today. But with agriculture, we can all make a difference because we all have to eat. And depending on how we buy our food, we can make the difference.
And also, not a lot of, like when you think about conservation biology, agriculture isn't one of the things that comes to the top of your mind. There's a lot of laws that have been put in place to regulate corporations in terms of preserving species. National forests, national parks have been implemented. But in agriculture, it's really kind of a new field. No-till hasn't been around that long. Since the 70s and 80s is really when it started getting started. And when we look back into time, agriculture is more sustainable because there were more farmers, but now as there are fewer farmers, they use less sustainable practices to feed more of us. So by getting these farmers to use more sustainable practices, it's really going to help conserve soil and water in the United States and around the world.